Hello and welcome into today's edition of the Arizona State Sun Devils Insider Podcast. My name is Kevin Hicks, your lead beat writer for the Arizona State Sun Devils on SI, and I am once again joined by writer for the site, my good friend Tanner Capolini, and we are here to preview the massive game for the 21st ranked Arizona State Sun Devils against the Utah Utes tomorrow night from Salt Lake City. And Tanner, how are you doing today, and how much are you looking forward to the matchup that is right in front of us?
Yeah, it's going well overall. It's been a tough football time for me with the Eagles losing to the Giants, and then I think this is going to be a tough matchup for ASU and Utah. This was before the Sam Levitt injury news even broke that we're going to discuss today, but I was kind of nervous about this game ever since about a week ago, and now with the injury news, I'm even a bit more nervous. But yeah, it'll be a interesting game to see how it goes down. It's a night game, right? You said I think 7 p.m. So I think that's one of the later kickoffs they've had.
Yep, it'll be 7:15 Mountain
Oh, okay.
Standard Time, so it'll be 8:15 in Utah.
Yeah, that's a pretty late game, but it'll be
Yeah.
a
Wait,
cool
no, it'll be
atmosphere.
8:15 Mountain Standard Time. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be 8:15 in Utah. So that is a major, major factor. I believe I don't remember what year it's traced back to, but Utah has won 90% of their home games that are late kickoffs, evening night kickoffs. I believe it's sometime during the Pac-12 era, ever since they joined the Pac-12 and moved up to the Big 12. But this is going to be a massive, massive matchup. Both teams are gunning for not only the chance to play in the Big 12 title game in 2025, but they're also gunning to possibly be one of the two or three programs in the Big 12 that are frequently in the top 15 in terms of program prestige, where the standing of the program is nationally. Texas Tech, BYU are some of those programs as well, but this is a much bigger matchup than just this week. This is something. This is fighting for the future, and the Sam Levitt news is just devastating for the Sun Devils. Uh, I can't speak too much on it personally, but he was practicing on Tuesday and Wednesday. It looked like he was fine, even through the listing of probable on the injury report. So for it to go from probable to doubtful in just a matter of a day, that's not very encouraging in my eyes. And it's going to be an uphill climb, like you said. And what are your thoughts on the likely absence of Sam Levitt?
So it's interesting because obviously injuries suck, and I hope Sam Levitt heals well. And um, I'm not concerned though as much as other people are, and I think how my thought process is. I had ASU losing this game earlier in the week. I think that Utah is a tough matchup for a couple of reasons. ASU struggled on the road this year. That's what their loss came from at Mississippi State. The Baylor game they struggled with. They ended up winning that game. So I just think this game would have been kind of a loss anyways. It would have been close. And I would rather Levitt kind of sit out and have him heal, and hopefully he's ready for Texas Tech, rather than have him play and something re-aggravates and he's out longer. And Coach Dillingham, I read, he said that he started in the Baylor game, right? So he played through TCU with this. So I would rather him kind of rest up and recover. Now, if he's out for Texas Tech, I'll probably more so sound the alarm. But at least for this game, I'm not too worried. Also because Jeff Sims, the backup quarterback, is pretty solid. He's very mobile. His accuracy can be, off at times, but he's like a solid player as well. And I think that this game is going to be mostly in the rain, which makes it harder to pass anyway. So I think even if Levitt was out there playing, would they have been slinging it a whole ton? I don't know. I think it would have been mainly a run game anyways. So you can do that with, Jeff Sims on some keeper options. So, obviously it sucks Sam Levitt's out. He's one of the better players on the team, but I do think that ASU still has some ways they can win this game, keep it competitive, and if they lose, with Sims in, it's like, okay, they lost with their backup, and if they win with their backup in, they can, raise their chances. So I think they have more to win than they have to lose with Sims starting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and that is the perfect transition into kind of giving our keys to a Sun Devils victory this week. That was a great point that Sims is a solid backup. Dillingham has kind of said in the past, well, he not even kind of said, he's said explicitly that he believes that the Sun Devils have two NFL level quarterbacks on their roster. And although Sims has struggled at times during his college career, he has 26 career starts under his belt. He has the physical tools to be a successful uh, field general of the offense. With his mobility, you could possibly factor in the option game as well. With Arizona State's pretty strong rushing attack, centered around Raleek Brown and possibly even Kyson Brown, Kanye Udo, that's something that you can certainly do against this wonderful Utah front seven. But my first key to the game, with all of that considered, is that the Sun Devils need to win the turnover battle to win this game. That is a non-negotiable in my opinion. And if you look at things, it's pretty likely that they will win the turnover battle even with Jeff Sims. You just have to avoid that fatal flaw, that fatal mistake. But Arizona State's in the top 10 of the nation in turnover margin. I believe they have a plus 1.8 turnover margin right now. And they haven't turned over the ball since, well, they did turn over the ball one time against TCU, but they had a positive turnover margin at the end of the game anyways. So that is a major factor. Utah, I believe, is in the negative, actually. I believe they're negative 0.3 in terms of turnover margin, and that ranks right in the middle of the FBS. So that is quite the discrepancy, and I think Brian Ward's opportunistic defense has potential to force a mistake by Devin Dampier, possibly even two. And I think that that is something that to keep your eye on, personally.
Yeah, I think one of the turnovers too is possibly fumbles with the rain. I think that's something that could be. That's what I'm more worried about for ASU. Jeff Simmons passing. I know he's had some turnovers in his career, interception wise, but I'm more so worried about the fumbles. But yeah, I think as long as ASU keeps it even or wins it, I think they should be good. My main thing is, I also do want to mention too the comment you mentioned about Dillingham saying that Sims and Levitt are both NFL caliber quarterbacks. He said that at the beginning of the season, so this was even before like we knew Sims was going to start. So he's been a believer in this guy for a while. It's not like he's just saying it to say it now. But yeah, my main thing is the trenches, and Utah has not one but two amazing offensive tackles in Spencer Fano and Caleb Lumu. Um, Both of them are considered to be at least top 10 to 20 prospects in the upcoming NFL draft. Most colleges don't have any top tackles, or if they do, they usually have one. The fact that Utah has two elite tackle prospects is honestly insane. I'm trying to think, usually you see that for like Ohio State or maybe Alabama. The fact that Utah has two of them is really good for them. And you think, okay. And I was thinking, well, how about the rest of their positions? Well, some of their guards and centers, they've been grading out really well this season too. So their O line is amazing. I think this is the best unit that ASU might have to face. And I think it's just going to be an interesting way to see how this D line attacks it. I did an ASU NSI piece saying, they could use some stunts, some misdirections up front, but this O line, I think that's what worries me the most in this game. To be honest, is Utah's O line, and they can run the ball well. You give Devin Dampier time, like that's the one thing that really concerns me with this game.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tanner. I think that the game might be won or lost in the trenches as well, on top of the turnover margin. Brian Ward and Kenny Dillingham have both talked about how Utah's offense is so unique because of the plus one, because of the triple options that they're able to run. The offensive line creates big holes for anybody running the ball to break through. Uh, they also don't set themselves up to lose yardage often. you usually see them 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, third and short, third and very manageable. And that's going to be a big challenge for Brian Ward's defense because Brian Ward is traditionally an aggressive play caller. And that's going to be an interesting match against the Utah offense that is completely different than anything we've seen out of the program in recent years. And Devin Dampier, this is probably a game where he really can showcase his running ability. He's improved as a passer, but he kind of has that next level athleticism like a Kyler Murray, like a Lamar, like a Cam Newton. He kind of has that next gear. But you are exactly right with the battle in the trenches being a big key to the game. I think my next key to the game is going to, this is a cliche one, but it's going to be field position. I think field position kind of goes hand in hand with the turnover battle and with trenches battle. I think those are usually parameters in any game, but especially in a game like this where you have a backup quarterback, where it's probably going to be rainy throughout the game. You really need to lean on Canyon Floyd, who's probable to play in this game after not punting in the TCU game. You're going to really need to pin Utah deep in their own territory, make it a field position battle, make it a time of possession battle, and I think that that is another major key in this game.
Yeah, I really like the point you mentioned, Kevin, about Utah not having a ton of negative plays, and a lot of that has to do when you have a good O line. Sacks don't happen as much, so it's going to be harder for Utah to go backwards. And I'm really interested to see how Brian Ward calls this game because he's aggressive, which I've kind of said I've liked, but I've had issues with. But it's like when you have a good O line, it's going to be hard to get pressure. I'm really interested to see how he calls this game. I think the offense is going to be good, but I think the defense is really going to be the make or break. And kind of continuing on, it's kind of how do they handle Devin Dampier? I mean, he's probably the most athletic quarterback ASU has faced so far this season in terms of mobility. The past two matchups, you had Josh Hoover, Sawyer Robertson. Yeah, they could move, but they're more guys from the pocket. And Dampier, you mentioned his scrambling ability, but he's also good throwing on the run. I was watching a bit of the UCLA Utah game, and he does a good job keeping his eyes down the field, which you don't always see for these college running quarterbacks. They usually just take it and run, but Dampier was keeping his eyes down the field. So I think keeping a QB spy, I think this is going to be a big game for the secondary to see how they handle. And I like your idea of the field position. I think the main thing with this game for ASU is just play clean, no mistakes. Um, Keep it simple offensively too for ASU's offense. Run the ball, maybe do some screens. I think this is going to be a game that's won in the smaller details rather than the big plays.
That is a great point. And going off that Devin Dampier point, I think that this has to do with the trenches battle as well. I guess defense as a whole, but Devin Dampier's growth as a passer really can't be understated either. And even though it's going to be a more of a field position battle, I feel like you're going to need to take away those explosives from Utah because Utah really has a much higher ceiling in terms of creating explosives this season as well as uh, preventing tackle for losses. Jason Beck is the offensive coordinator of the Utah Utes. He was Devin Dampier's OC at New Mexico last season. But if you look at his list of quarterbacks that he's coached in his career, he's coached Taysom Hill when he was at BYU. He coached Kurt Benkert and Bryce Perkins when he was at University of Virginia. So you see kind of that archetype of quarterback that he coaches, and you see the marked improvement that they have when he coaches them. And it's just very, very, it stands out to me personally. I think that this is going to be a big game for Keyshawn Elliott, both as a spy
Hmm.
and in coverage. I think that him and Jordan Crook are going to need to step up, and even Martell Hughes, they need to be the field generals that they're called to be. And I think that they're going to be instrumental in stopping a lot of Utah drives. I think that the linebacking core is just as big as the trenches in this game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I am interested to hear your thoughts on this, Kevin. But where do you think Devin Dampier says compares to like Josh Hoover and Sawyer Robertson in like terms of what could give the ASU defense more fits? Like, do you think he is kind of more of a challenging guy that for them to go up against than Hoover and Robertson? Or
I don't know. I don't know if I would say more challenging is. I don't think I would use that verbiage. I think I would say it's a unique challenge. I think that Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover are probably the two best quarterbacks in the conference outside of Sam Levitt. But I do think that Devin Dampier's very close, if not in the top five, if you would ask me personally. But his just the way the Utah offense operates, it's unlike anything that ASU has seen this season. It's going to be very, very hard for the front seven to generate the negative yard plays, like we both said. The Baylor and the TCU offenses both are explosive, but they both also give opportunities to the defense to take advantage of in terms of creating turnovers, creating negatives. Well, Utah does have a negative turnover margin. It's not by much, and Devin Dampier has done a very good job of taking care of the ball for the most part this season, especially compared to what we saw from him last season. So that's going to be a very, very fascinating thing, and just the ability for him to be a +1. That's going to test the ASU rush defense like they haven't been tested this season either. Although they do have a year sample of being an elite run defense, it's going to be a completely different monster going up against Caleb Lomu, Spencer Fano, like you said earlier, and that rushing attack in general. It's going to be a very unique challenge, and I think that they are ready to take that head on, but it's going to be an absolute grinded out game, and I think it's going to come down to the last 5 minutes of the game or so.
yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned there. I agree about the grinded out game. I think it could be that. Yeah, so I did a couple months ago ranking ASU's quarterbacks, the opposing quarterbacks. And I had Devin Dampier at six. He might move up a bit, but that's where I had him. And I think the thing with Dampier that kind of scares me is that I think with his mobility, he kind of is able to neutralize a lot of ASU's best defensive players in terms of like Keith Abney and some of the other secondary guys, because a lot of the ASU's best plays on defense is he's against these pocket quarterbacks where they can read them out, say this is where they're going to throw and jump that throwing lane. But with Dampier, it's like, well, he could look at someone and then move on to the next one, physically move on with his legs. So he also has a good deep ball too. Like he's a pretty athletic quarterback. I like how you mentioned the Cam Newton comp because I do think there's a bit of Cam Newton in his game. I know that's a big comparison because Cam Newton, won an NFL MVP and did all this stuff and was a number one overall pick. But I think there's a lot of him. I also see a lot of Malik Willis, who I really liked coming out of Liberty. But yeah, it's just going to be an interesting game. I'm also interested to see, Kevin, what you think of this. Do you think ASU is going to be more aggressive in this game or conservative? Like, say, going it for on fourth down, do you think they're going to more so take the field goal? Or, like, how do you think they're going to approach that area? Or how should they?
I think Dillingham has been very clear that he feels a lot better about the field goal situation this season compared to last season in terms of Jesus Gomez being in place. But he's also very adaptive. I think we all know that Dillingham's not a coach that is by his ways and it's his way or the highway. He's very adaptive. He's very open to changing strategy and switching things up. I think it's going to be very situational. I think it's going to be what's happening in the moment. Like, for example, if they're down 14-7 in the third quarter with the ball at the 20-yard line, right at the edge of the red zone, 4th and 2, there's probably a pretty good chance they're going to try and go for it because if they kick a field goal, there's no guarantee they're going to get the ball back anytime soon with the Utah offense, especially if they chew up a lot of clock with the ball in their hands. Something like that, you might look at going for it. If you're tied 7-7 right before halftime, you're probably going to kick the field goal if you're in range to kick it. I think that's just going to be a very case-by-case basis. But I do think that they are going to be aggressive in certain pockets in this game. I saw a stat that Sam Levitt, I think around 17% of his passes attempted this season have been either behind the line of scrimmage or in the flat, which that's one of the highest rates in the FBS. I think that a lot of the same is going to be utilized for Jeff Sims, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see a shot player to call just to throw the Utah defense off a little bit. That's where a Jaron Hamilton can come into play. That's where a Jordan Tyson can come into play. I think that Arizona State certainly has the advantage there. Still, I think that they can exploit Utah. Maybe even if it's just one time, that might be all the difference in the game. Uh, so that's really kind of what I'm thinking right now, personally.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do like how you mentioned too, kind of that they could go a deep shot once or twice. Because the thing is to remember, like even though Levitt's probably out, and Sims is in ASU, like Jordan Tyson's still playing. Like a lot of these other guys are still in it, so that's something to keep in mind. The last point I'll make here for things to look out before we kind of head into the prediction segment is Utah's head coach, Kyle Whittingham. He's been with Utah for a while. He's been coaching for a while, and he's one of these guys. That's kind of like Kenny Dillingham, who's a program builder. So I think that this game is going to kind of be a coaching battle as well. ASU's faced some good coaches, but I think Kyle Whittingham is one of those guys who has his own kind of style. Utah kind of reminds me a bit of ASU in terms of the way they're built physically. This is kind of program that's kind of been rebuilt over the past couple years. So, yeah, I think that's one thing that's going to be interesting to see is this coaching battle of Kenny Dillingham versus Kyle Whittingham, who wins. And I think that ASU has a good coach they're going up against. I think that's going to just make things more difficult for them.
Yeah, Kyle, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Kyle Whittingham's a coach that Dillingham has a lot of respect for. He's made that very, very clear because they played at all three. They played each other the last. Well, they play each other every year in the Pac-12. This is the second year in a row that they're going to play each other in the Big 12. So they're going on around 15 years of playing each other in a row. So Dillingham was on the Arizona State staff back when Utah and ASU were starting to become budding rivals. I'd say that I wouldn't call them full-on rivals because I think Arizona is really the only like explicit rival that they have. But I think that you've seen a little bit of tension building up between the two programs just because of, like I said earlier, they're jockeying for position to be considered one of those big-time Big 12 programs moving forward. Um, but Dillingham has a ton of respect for Whittingham. In his Monday press conference, he was talking about how Utah is kind of the program that ASU aspires to be long term in terms of how they're structured, how they operate. And Whittingham, like, he took over Urban Meyer at Utah when Urban Meyer left for Florida. So he took over a program that had high expectations at that time, and he's exceeded them. He took them to the Pac 12, he took them to the Big 12. He's had them in the Rose Bowl. He's had them on the doorstep of a playoff berth on a few occasions. He's the second longest tenured coach in the FBS behind Iowa's Kirk Ferentz. So he has a long list of successes. He's cultivated a lot of NFL talent. He's very steadfast in his game planning. He's very meticulous. He really is one of the premier coaches in all of college football. And I think that it's going to be a phenomenal chess match between the two coaches, kind of the old guard versus the new guard. And uh, I'm absolutely all in seeing what the two coaches do in this game in terms of their approach and their strategy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like the deep dive there on Kyle Whittingham because we don't mention the opposing coaches a ton, but I do think this is one worth mentioning. And you were mentioning the OC earlier, so I thought it was a good point to build off of that with the head coach for Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um I have a lot of respect for Whittingham as well personally. I think that he is like really one of like the 10 to 11 to 12 best coaches in all of college football. He's really in that conversation with the Dabo Sweeney's, with the Brian Kelly's. I think that he's up. I think Dillingham is as well, but Whittingham's done it for 20 years, so there's a big difference there in many cases. So now let's finish up today's show with our game predictions. Tanner, what are you rolling with in terms of the outcome of the game and the score?
So yeah, like I said before, I even knew Sam Levitt was probably going to be out. I had ASU losing this game for a couple of reasons. They've had some close wins against Baylor and TCU, and those were, especially TCU, amazing wins. But at the end of the day, it is hard to keep doing that consistently. Um, and I do think this is the game where it gets to ASU. I think they lose this game. When Levitt was playing, I had them losing. I think like 28 to like 24, or yeah, I think I had them losing like 28 to 31. I'm gonna have them losing this game 26 to 35 or 34, somewhere around there. ASU has not allowed 30 points to an opponent this season. I do think, though, it changes this game. I think just Utah's O line is amazing. Like I said, I think it's probably the best unit this ASU team could face. There's a chance that every ASU or every Utah offensive lineman could be a good NFL starter in like 3 to 4 years, which is crazy, but it's true when you have two amazing tackles who are some of the just best prospects in next year's NFL draft, plus great linemen. And I think the rain, I think an away game, I think there's just a lot going against ASU. So being realistic, I think they lose. Yeah, it's a bummer, but I think that there would be what 2-1 in the Big 12, and I think that Texas Tech game is going to be huge. If they lose against Texas Tech, I'll more start to panic and be like, okay, hold on, let's see. But I think they lose, and then yeah, I think all sights are to the Texas Tech game. But yeah, I think ASU does uh, lose this one, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you for that, Tanner. I was of the opinion that they were going to pull out this win early in the week. I came into the week thinking it was going to be a low scoring slugfest, even with Sam playing. But I thought that when you get into a situation like that, you have Sam Levitt, you have Jordan Tyson, you have all these high level players, and you go out and you let them make plays. Like Kenny Dillingham said earlier in this week, you want MJ taking the shot, you want Kobe taking the shot when the game's on the line. When you have two guys like that, plus a few other game changing X factors, I really thought that ASU had the edge, and I had them winning 20-17 earlier in the week. But now I kind of flipped it around. I think Utah wins the game 20-17. I'm not. I think a lot of ASU fans are acting like the game's completely out of reach now that Jeff Sims is likely to start. I think that this is a game that sets up pretty well for him to at least be a serviceable game manager in. I think that they are going to be able to run the ball. I think that they're going to be able to at least keep the field position battle pretty even. I think that they are going to set up Sims nicely to avoid costly mistakes. I think that Jordan Tyson being there is a great security blanket, as well as Jalen Moss coming back. Uh, but at the end of the day, I kind of just think that's going to be, like I said, it's going to come down to the last 5 minutes of the game, who has the ball last. And I kind of just have a feeling that Utah is going to get the ball, drive it down slowly but surely, and kick a field goal as the time expires to win the game. I kind of just have a feeling that is going to be that kind of game. And I could be wrong, but the last few weeks been pretty good with the predictions. I think with the even gone pretty close on the scores in the Baylor and TCU games. But at the end of the day, they need this game because the Texas Tech game is not going to be easy with or without Sam Levitt. And if they lose this game and lose the Texas Tech game, you can all but kiss their chances at another Big 12 championship goodbye, at least this season. It would be very, very tough to come back from that, especially in terms of the tiebreakers and everything that goes on in the conference standings procedurally. But I would not be surprised if they win at all. Don't take my prediction as they are completely sunk this week. I think they still have a great chance. But at the end of the day, everything will be taken care of on the field. The Sun Devils still have a great coach. They have a great roster that has been playing well as of late. And that is all that matters right now. Tanner, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to explain my score a bit because that it does seem a bit higher for more of the conditions, but I kind of have this game being close. I think this is just a thing of with Utah's great O line, they could maybe pull off a big rushing touchdown at the end. So I think this game is going to be kind of close for like I could see it being like fourth quarter, 8 minutes left. We're in the low 20s, and then kind of Utah pulls away at the end. I do think this is a competitive game. I think that ASU is gonna stick in there. I think it'll be a good fight. I just think things are gonna catch up to them. But yeah, I don't think this will be a blowout Utah win. Even though I have the score, I have it being 10-point victory. I think it'll be close, and yeah, they could definitely win. I think that would be it's definitely doable. They still have the talent. Jeff Sims, best of luck to him, and best of luck to ASU. And regardless of what happens, it's going to be interesting and fun to cover this game.
Absolutely, Tanner. And that is about it for today's show on Friday's edition of the Sun Devil Insider Podcast. Uh, Thank you so much for joining me once again, Tanner. And I'm looking forward to covering the game with you tomorrow. And thank you to all of our viewers. And I will see you on Saturday for game coverage.